What if I told you that McLaren no longer has a number one driver? What if the fastest driver in your garage is not who you think? Today I reveal to you why Oscar Piastri is rewriting the order within the team and how he has done it without anyone seeing it coming. Not even his engineer. What happened that Saturday at the Lusail International Circuit will be remembered for a long time within the paddock. To the general public, it was a simple sprint race, one wire to wire. But for McLaren, it meant something much deeper. It was the exact moment when Oscar Piastri stopped being a promise to become a real contender, not only for single victories but for the World Championship. And that change was not a progressive evolution. It was a knock on the table. Since Friday there were already signs that something different was happening. In qualifying for the sprint, Piastri set a time of 1 minute and 20.055 seconds. A perfect lap that not only placed him on pole, but left everyone wondering if that performance was circumstantial or if he was hiding something else. In theory, Lando Norris, championship leader and considered the driver with the greatest understanding of the MCL 39, should have had an advantage. Even in the telemetry, it showed that Lando was faster in the first two sectors. But Oscar, with almost surgical calm, knew where the difference was. It was in the last sector, that section that mixes technique, management and courage, where it made the difference. While Norris pushed aggressively and ended up going off the track by overshooting the last corner, even damaging the bottom of his car, Piastri closed his lap with a precision that not even his engineer had anticipated. The paddock stopped. On the monitors in the McLaren garage, Stella watched the data over and over again. The team did not expect that return. In fact, Norris himself was one of the first to approach the analysis table to understand what Oscar had done differently. There was no clear answer, just numbers. And all those numbers pointed to one thing. There was a layer of performance in the MCL 39 that only Piastri had unlocked. That uncertainty turned to amazement the next day during the sprint. From the lights out, Piastri led with authority, controlling the pace, managing the tires as if he had 5 more seasons of experience. He didn't make mistakes. He did not respond to the aggressive style. He imposed his own. One based on control, efficiency, and a perfect reading of the track condition. What should have been a close victory turned into a silent demonstration of power. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic. It was clean, direct, and that's what baffled everyone at McLaren the most. Andrea Stella understood it immediately. McLaren no longer had a main driver based on accumulated merits. What he now had was a dangerous duality. A balance that could be broken with a single gesture, a single poorly measured decision. Because in a team fighting for the title, there is no room for draws. And Lando Norris, who had worked for years to build his leadership within the team, suddenly found himself in a new situation. It was no longer about protecting a young companion. It was about defending his position within a team that could no longer pretend that there were hierarchies. The way in which Norris avoided talking about his teammates' victory in the subsequent press conference did not go unnoticed by anyone. There was discomfort. There was respect, yes, but there was also tension. The question that hovered over the paddock was inevitable. If Oscar Piastri was able to find a rhythm that not even his team anticipated, what else can this driver hide that has not yet been revealed? Because if this was just a warning, McLaren could be about to face one of the most complex challenges in modern Formula One. Winning while fighting an invisible internal war. For years, the term hidden pace has been part of the unofficial language within the Formula One paddock. It is a concept that is rarely heard in press conferences, but that all engineers, data analysts, and drivers understand instantly. This is a type of performance that is not evident on timesheets, or even superficial telemetry. It is a combination of sensations, car behavior patterns, and subtle driver responses that, together, reveal a speed that is there, but has not yet been directly shown. In Qatar, Oscar Piastri not only exhibited that hidden rhythm, he stripped him completely naked. The Lusail track is particularly demanding. It combines fast corners with changes of direction, medium-speed traction, and areas where energy management is as important as raw power. The conditions that weekend were complicated. Crosswind, dropping temperature as the sun went down, and a surface that got cold unpredictably. It was the kind of environment where a poorly balanced car turns into a nightmare. But it was also the kind of environment where an exceptional driver can make a difference. Oscar did it surgically. While Lando Norris, backed by data, sought to squeeze MCL 39 in each sector, Piastri took another approach. It reduced tire wear, avoided overheating in the long curves of the second sector, and above all, masterfully executed the third sector, which is where fast laps break down most easily if there is no total control of the rear axle. It wasn't faster visually, it was more effective in the most delicate part of the route. This is key. Because in Formula One, many times drivers tend to follow what the telemetry dictates as if it were absolute truth. But Oscar went beyond the data. He sensed something in the car, a response zone that wasn't being fully utilized, and he exploited it. He was able to adapt his driving style to a window of performance that even his engineers had not previously identified. In technical terms, this ability to find a hidden rhythm has deep roots. It involves advanced compression of the aerodynamic balance, a special sensitivity to read changes in adhesion, and, perhaps most difficult, the ability to manage the differential in real time without compromising stability. It takes a combination of muscle memory, anticipation, and self-confidence that few have at this level. But there's something more subtle that went unnoticed by many. Piastri wasn't maximizing his sectors 1 and 2 like Lando was. Not because he couldn't, but because he understood that his return depended on the end. The famous turn 14, the last of the circuit, has historically been a trap for those who arrive by overdriving. He didn't fall. His passage through that curve was clean, without corrections, without loss of traction. Meanwhile, Norris pushed too hard and paid the price. The result was visible on the timesheet. But the reason for that result was only understood by looking at the raw data without filters. Stella described it internally as an unexpected phenomenon, and in technical forums the case began to be discussed as an example of unforeseen access to performance, an expression that reveals how deeply this performance impacted even the most closed circles of track engineering. These types of situations are not common. When a pilot finds something his engineers haven't identified, it's usually by chance. But in Piastri's case, everything indicates that it was intentional, that I knew it, that he looked for it, and that changes the rules of the game. Because when a driver begins to read the car better than the data, that is when he stops being just another piece of the system. It becomes the system. And that is exactly what Oscar Piastri began to demonstrate in Qatar. The atmosphere inside the McLaren pit after the Qatar sprint was not what normally accompanies a victory. There were no explosions of joy, no excessive hugs, no grandiose speeches to the press. The celebration was sober, almost uncomfortable. Because beyond the result, what had happened on the track had disordered the pieces of the internal board. And Andrea, the man in charge of maintaining stability within a structure that leads both championships, knew it from the first second. With the victory in the Qatar sprint, Oscar Piastri not only scored important points, he gave a direct blow to the classification. The Australian reduced the distance with Lando Norris to just 22 units, and he did so at a key moment of the season, when the dynamics within McLaren seemed defined, and when Red Bull has not yet managed to fully resolve its problems with aerodynamic rebound in medium and high-speed corners. That narrowing in the championship table may seem numerical, but it is actually structural. Because in modern Formula One, the fight for the title is not only defined on the track. It is also decided in the strategy rooms and engine software decisions, in internal emails that decide which driver receives the latest aerodynamic update first. And all that, until now, favored Norris. But with this new reality, McLaren faces a very high-level strategic dilemma. If he continues to treat Norris as the tip of the spear, he runs the risk of wasting the potential of an unstoppably rising Piastri. But if you match it on conditions, you expose yourself to an internal conflict of interest that can compromise the stability of the team as a whole. And this occurs in an even more delicate context. Red Bull, which until a year ago dominated the championship with authority, is now involved in internal turbulence. Recent statements by Helmut Marko and Christian Horner acknowledge the existence of a performance and leadership crisis. Max Verstappen has won, yes, but not consistently. And for the first time since 2021, he looks uncomfortable, questioning decisions, demanding more from the technical team. This opens a window of opportunity for McLaren that they simply cannot miss. But that window is narrowing race by race. What happened in Qatar is a turning point. If Piastri shows that level again in Sunday's Grand Prix and everything indicates yes, he will not simply be a threat to his teammate. He will be a real threat to the championship lead. And then the real challenge will appear: internal politics. Now the team faces a paradox. Either it allows its two drivers to fight without restrictions, risking losing valuable points in the process, or it imposes a hierarchy that, if not perceived as fair, could break the trust of one of them forever. Leave your opinion in the comments what you think about all this.